All right, we're starting Module 7, which is, Module 7, which is, hand bending. And, let's just, if you got your book, go to the very first page that deals with Module 7, just to look at that picture, which ought to be a familiar exercise to you, using a hand bender. All right, now, we also have in this module, we have a cutting and threading pipe. So Marcus told me that he has not been on a job where they had rigid conduit where you had to cut and thread pipe. Have you cut and thread pipe? You can use a pipe vise and pipe machines, hand threaders and power pony.
Wofford, never mind. Wofford did it. Wofford.
You did it at Walford? Yeah. All right, now, there's a big difference. You can bend rigid galvanized steel conduit with a hand bender. But what happens is you go up a size with your bender, so you would bend 1/2 inch steel pipe, rigid steel, with a 3/4 bender. You would bend 1 inch, a 3/4 with 1 inch, and then you might bend 1 inch with an 1 1/4 bender. Now I rarely see, even with EMT, in my experience, I've rarely seen an 1 1/4 EMT bender used on the job very often. Normally, they buy pre-made 90s, and you fit the pipe, and you put the 90s in the pipe, and you might on occasion make offsets, or maybe a saddle with an 1 1/4, but normally you have a Chicago bender on the job, or something that'll bend a mechanical bender or something.
Yeah.
All right, so both of y'all, and I would suspect that most of the other men that are in this class have bent pipe or are bending on the pipe, and they're bending pipe now on their job. So, it's a continuous thing to learn how to bend, and one of the things that this module requires, it requires you to select and use hand bending equipment, which is a hand bender, and you use geometry to make a bend, and then it gives you some bends to make, a 90-degree bend, an offset bend, and also part of the requirement is to make back-to-back bends and saddle bends.
Yes.
So are you consider yourself, I'll ask both of you, to be proficient with a bender, a hand bender to bend pipe? Do you think, like all these demands that they're making here, there's 4 bends that they ask you to make, and what we've done in the past, the first level 1 class I did, I brought a bender in, and guys made some of the bend, and then later on what they did was they got one of their co-workers to take pictures of them bending these 4 bends. If somebody would take a picture of them bending a 90, somebody would take a picture of them bending a back-to-back offset and a saddle, and they would store that on their phone, and they would bring it in and show it to me, and I had permission to accept that as their performance work. So that way we don't have to go somewhere and and set up a bending shop. I mean, you do it right on the job, and you bring pictures of you doing it.
Right.
And it saves us from having to, go to another place.
Pictures
Or-
and videos.
Just, if you bring a picture with a 90-degree bend, and I can clearly see that you've bent a 90-degree bend, I'll accept that. And you offset, bend your offset or your saddle, show me a picture of your saddle. And what I did before was I got a foreman to verify that you made that bend. You just bring a piece of paper in from your foreman, write those 4 bends down and say, Marcus is capable of making these 4 bends with a hand bender. So that's how we've done it in the past, and it's been allowed by the Greenville Tech administration to do it that way. So, and if you print your pictures out, I can put them in your, we put them in your record. So there is a record of it. So we have 4 2.5-hour sessions, and because they have allowed so much time in this module for that work to be done during the class, we probably will have some short classes, but I expect to see progress with you bringing the pictures and the signed statement from your foreman.
Right.
Your foreman writes his name, tells what job you're on, and signs it. Just signs his name that you made those bends in his presence. All right, now, I don't know what kind of training you've had with using geometry and making a bend, but geometry is a very basic activity. Using geometry is a very basic activity in helping you bend pipe and keeping it level, keeping it plumb, getting the proper distances on it. So, for instance, you bending a 90-degree bend. Kevin, do you know how to stub up a proper length, stub up 90? If you got a hand bender, do you know how to utilize that hand bender if you want to stub a 90 up a certain distance? Do you know how to do that? Do you know how to use your bender and add and deduct length so that you get the proper length when you put it right? You know how to do it. Do you know how to do it, Marcus?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I want you to do that. For next week, I want you to be sure to bring some evidence of bending. Either bring that letter from your, or a signed statement from your foreman on the job, and his title, and or bring a picture of you bending something. And I want you to practice. And one of the things that I think is where we have difficulty in trying to do the performance work here is we have to get pipe. Somebody has to furnish that pipe.
Right.
We have to get, we have to have the tools to do it with. Somebody has to provide the tool. We have to, so if we can do that on the job site through the normal exercise of your work, then there's no wasted conduit, because you're going to bend 90s every day. You may not bend the offset or a back-to-back bend every day, but you're going to do it occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just make a record of when you do that, and it doesn't tell us that we have to use any particular size of pipe. So whatever you're using, a half inch, 1 inch, 3/4, whatever.
You want the picture of the pipe, or you want us in the picture?
I want to be able to see you in the picture with, so you need somebody to take the picture for you. I need to see you and the bend, and that bend doesn't have to be completed. Just see the activity of the bending, you know, so that it's obvious that you're bending a 90, or obvious that you're bending an offset. Now I bend my offsets, I stand my bender up, I mark my pipe, I stand my bender up, and I bend my offsets
Yep, I do
with the
that.
pipe up in there. Some people
I
do it
too.
on the floor,
Yeah.
but I do it. I mean, so how you do it is, long as if you making a 6-inch offset and you can make a 6-inch offset on the floor, fine. If you, I mean, to me, it's just handier to have it up where you can, and if you,
Actually do it. Yeah.
if you look at your mark on the bender, and I'll bring a bender next week. I'll bring a bender and we'll look at that bender and we'll see all the help
Right.
that bender has written on it that will, you know, that we can utilize when we're bending pipe.
Yeah, that would be good.
So you want us to do it 90 and then
If you look in the front of you,
type of
look, if you look in the front, I know you probably don't carry your book with you all the time, but if you'll look in
the
the
performance
at the
tags?
front page
I
of
see.
module, hand bending, it says, under the performance tab, under the supervision of the instructor, you should be able to do the following. Make 90-degree bends, back-to-back bends, offset, and saddle bends using a hand bender, and then cut, ream, and thread conduit. Now, if you're not running threaded conduit on your job, we may have to do something different to get that done. We may have to go somewhere where they got a pipe machine, but if there's any way possible, if you just take a picture of you and a pipe. Now, I mean, there's various ways, a power pony and a chain vise, a power vise and a die head. There's various ways. Different companies have different, and the extent of how much pipe's going to be threaded on the job as to how well the job's tooled up for threading. You know, if you just got a few things to thread, they might have a hand threader, a ratchet, and a die, and a chain vise, you know, because sometimes it's just a matter of the portion of threaded pipe is not very much of the full extent of the run. They just like where you come up a wall running PVC and you bring a 90 up, and you want that last few feet to be a steel pipe. So you know, just we'll try to do as much as we can to make it as easy as we can for you to do the performance work. So we're going over here. Now, this is probably something that is not commonly used, but do you know what a hickey is? Do y'all know what a hickey? A hickey is a pipe bender, and the head of it will look something like this. It's got a handle up here, and then it comes out here, and it's got another little foot, and this is a shoe. And so you take that, you put your pipe in there, and it's not precise, it's not accurate, but if you just like running a lot of pipe on the slab, on the unfinished slab on the earth, and you just need to kick your pipe a little bit. A hickey bender is often used there, and you can make a 90 with it, but you have to walk a 90 pretty much. You have to just move your 90 incrementally around that. So you need to investigate as much as you can what sorts of benders.
Here they are.
Just to show a picture.
Yeah.
You can go. What you need to make sure you go and see what type benders are available to you, and how, yeah, there's a Hickey figure 3.
Yeah.
And, you can actually, if you're careful, you can actually make a pretty decent looking 90 if you have to on one of them.
Really?
Yeah, it's not always as smooth, but it's a matter of doing it like, you might want to mark it in increments and say do, all right, you want a 90, you want to do, you want to put, say, 9 marks on there and put them maybe a ½ inch apart, and you just keep moving that up a ½ inch at a time, and you bend 5 degrees 18 times, and it gives you a 90. It'll be sweeping, but I mean, it'll look decent, and it'll do.
Right.
And you can bear down on it, keep your foot right on it, right there on the top of it, at the where the bender head is.
Yeah.
You can bend one pretty tight, but a lot of times when you're trying to bend it real tight, it'll crimp on you, and you have to be careful of that. So, now how about PVC? Have y'all bent PVC with a
Hot box.
hot
Yeah.
box? Yeah. Well, now, I've bent PVC with a heat gun.
Yeah.
I've probably bent a little bit with a torch. You have to be real careful with a torch, if it's gonna be seen, you have to be real careful, because it'll bubble up and blister on you, so you have to, and you can work it, get you some good rags and wet them, and then when you get it into shape, cool it real quick.
Right.
So, but it doesn't say in the process of the performance work, it does not say what you need to, what you have to bend. So, or what type pipe you have to bend. Now, have y'all had use of? There's several methods that people have come up with for bending PVC, with cold bending. Have y'all had, like, they make a spring, like a coil, and you slide it over your pipe. They got a ½ inch size, 3/4 size, and 1 inch size. Then you can just take your hands, you know, and you bend that spring. That spring keeps your pipe from collapsing. So you can bend the 90 and it won't crimp up on you. I mean, you know, like if you normally try to bend the 90 over your knee or something.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, that is not the norm, but they are used, and so, all right, so if you look at, it says on page 2, using geometry to make a bend. Bending conduit requires that you use some basic geometry. You may already be familiar with most of the concepts needed. However, here is a review of the concepts directly related to this task. A right triangle is defined as any triangle with a 90-degree angle. The side directly opposite the 90-degree angle is called the hypotenuse, and the side on which the triangle sits at the base. The vertical side is called the height. On the job, you will apply the relationship in a right triangle with making it an offset bend. The offset forms the hypotenuse of a right triangle. All right, so it says there are reference tables for size and offset bends based on these relationships, and then it tells you to see Appendix A. So it'd be good for you to, like down at the down in figure 6, it shows a right triangle and the offset bend, and you see how that triangle fits above your pipe, and hypotenuse is the offset. Now, are y'all familiar with the 30-degree bend, and like in bending an offset 30-degree, flip the pipe 180 and bend another 30-degree and doubling your distance in order, if you want a 10-inch offset, you use 20 inches of pipe, so y'all done that. Okay. So, all right, now look at we talked about this a little bit, look on page 4, and, at that piece of PVC. What do you think happened right there?
It wasn't hot.
Got it too hot in one place and it collapsed on him, didn't it? So there, you know, y'all have done enough of this work to,
Yeah, I mean, this is daily, what we do, like, bent pipe.
yeah. Well, you know, look again on page, kinks are created by bending too small a radius using a hickey, so we've talked about some of this things. But let me tell you about, some people, we are in a time where much commercial work is done with MCK.
Yeah.
Have you been through that?
Yep.
Done, and pipe is not used very much on a job at all. And so we're not really training people definitively to run conduit, to bend conduit. I never learned to do this, but there's a system called concentric bending. Do you know what that is?
No.
That means that you can make a run of pipe, various sizes of pipe, and by using proper formulas and using incremental bending, you can bend that pipe where all the radiuses in that pipe match.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen runs of pipe where you could take a cup, and you know yourself that if you got a 3-inch factory 90 and a 1-inch factory 90, it's hard to get the pipe to look right because it widens the gap in the radius.
Yeah.
Well, but these guys in years gone by, and it was labor intensive, but it was beautiful pipe work. But I've seen it that you could take a coupling, a 1-inch coupling, and put it down the gap, and there wouldn't be a variation of 1/8 of an inch taking that coupling around the gap, even around the bends. And that's a lost art. I mean, I bet there's probably not one electrician in 1,000 that can do it today. I never learned to do it because we were already into I've been doing electrical work 50 years. So I came in about the time that they started giving a lot more consideration to labor cost. And so you could put a factory 90 up or bend a regular radius in a 90, and you could do that in half the time or 1/4 the time that it took to bend a concentric 90-degree bend. But matter of fact, I had a man trying to teach me one time. I was down in Bamberg, South Carolina, on a plant down there, and the man that I was working for, that was a master mechanic in this one building, he had a boss that was a master mechanic over all the facilities, and he was showing me he was trying to teach me how to bend a concentric 90s and make a concentric run of pipe. And the other man came and said, "What's going on?" He told me, he said, "We don't want to spend the time doing that. So just go in and bend a regular 90 and get that pipe up there." So I missed the opportunity. That's been about 50 years ago. So anyway, you can do neat work with, but I just want to remind you that if you'll take your textbook and all those bends, the offset bend, the 90-degree bend, the back-to-back bend, all of those bends, it gives you some pointers on bending them. So if you hadn't done that, a lot of it, you can take your textbook and use it to help you make these bends. And so next week, Next week, you'll bring me some pictures in, and I'd ask you to do this, I'd ask you especially, Marcus, cause you're on the job with 3 other guys. Just tell them what's going on and ask them, tell them we need some pictures of them doing work. Tell them they have to come to work before they can take a picture on the job though, so remind them. Who, you said 2 of them was out today, Dominic and
Yeah,
Barnes, David.
yeah.
What's the penalty for staying out of work?
I don't know.
Don't get paid.
Is that it? You stood, you say, look at, have you seen these, what they've been in box offsetting on page 13? Using this offset bender for wall mounted boxes with exposed conduit. Those things, I've seen those things and used those things, but usually I can take a piece of, like bending a box off there, I just put the 3/4 pipe, normally what you got. I just put it over my shoulder and just kick it just a little bit, flip it over and just kick it again, and
Yeah.
you get, when you've done it a while, it gets where it's easy to be consistent with what you make.
That's right.
All right, well, you got your test in, and you got your, do that, test, section review test, and, I'll see y'all next week.
All right. Sounds good.
Where is, Preston? What job is he on? Do you know? Don't know. I was gonna say, if anybody's on the job with him, try to fill him in on what we're working on.
That's yours.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. You have a good night.
Tell them they one core test behind too, they need to get that done.
All right.